Hello, chess world, it's Anna here, back from the Olympic training camp, back to the middle game shows with you guys. I hope that you've been missing me. I've been missing the show, but I think we cannot complain. The month of April is the month of chess. There are so many events, I don't even know which event to follow. The US Championship has just finished, the Chinese Championship is still going on, and the Italian Team Championship, and the Women Grand Prix, and of course Norway Chess right now with Jan and Peter Svidler. I'm sure that you are following the event. Let me know who you are cheering for, and about the other events too. Of course, Fabiano Caruana has just won the US Championship. Tomorrow he will play against Garry Kasparov, Hikaru Nakamura and Vasily, so that will be an amazing event as well. So much chess going on. I love April, and I also love April because today is the birthday of my sister. So if she's watching, last time she was watching the show with you guys. Boldog szülinapot, Kata, happy birthday, Kata. She's 27 today, and if I manage, I have a picture of her with me. This is my sister and me going to the beach a few years back. I think we turned a bit older since, but she's a great person, and she also used to play chess. She still knows, of course, how to play chess. She is the former under 10 Hungarian champion, and she used to beat me. She was a lot stronger than me. Just then she decided that film studies, sign language and a book editorial was more important to her than chess. So that's what she is doing now, and I'm very proud of her. Besides that, to celebrate her birthday, we have a great game. Let me bring back the camera. We have a Vishy Anand game for today. We continue with the topic of opposite side castling. Pawn storm against the king with g5, h5, g6. And after that, at 7 o'clock, we have a thematic tournament. So make sure you sign up for the thematic tournament. I will now paste the link if I manage. You know how clumsy I am, so I will try to paste the link to the thematic tournament where you can sign up. We're gonna begin at 7. Make sure you sign up before then 7 o'clock, so you have still 52 minutes to sign up for the thematic tournament. Unrated this time. My fault was the other time that it was rated. Hope that you all recovered your rating since, because it's an unrated event. Nobody's gonna lose rating because of practicing with me. So I'll be watching your games, commentating your games, giving you personal advice on how can you improve your chess, and of course it's gonna be about one of the positions that we have seen within this topic of opposite side castling. Let me paste the link to the tournament, the thematic tournament, if I find it. I'm so clumsy. Here it is. Paste, copy, paste. Oh my, I think one day I should really take an IT course because I messed things up. Anyway, that's where you can and should sign up for the thematic tournament. And before that, of course, we will study this game that I already mentioned, the spectacular attacking victory by Vishy Anand against Jan Timman in a Chorus Vaikanze tournament from 2004. Let me bring up the board that's necessary for this. There it is. Vishy with the white pieces, so you guys are playing with the white pieces against Jan Timman at the Chorus Vaikanze, very famous tournament. So we are white, we're gonna skip the opening because what we care about now is the middle game and the opposite side castling. So let's see how we reach that position. It was, of course, a Sicilian. It's so often we reach an opposite side middle game from the Sicilian. Let's just go through these moves quickly. We have the rouser system of the Sicilian, castle queenside, and soon black will go castle kingside. So that's when everything starts to become really exciting. Already in this position, there are so many possibilities for black. He can go b5, for instance. He can play h5 to restrict white's options with g4, or he can castle kingside immediately. Timman preferred rook c8. This is all theory, so I'm not gonna be discussing these moves. It's up to you which one you choose with black if you play this opening. But what we care about is that after g4, we already launched the attack. It's true that the black king hasn't castled yet, but we know that it either stays in the middle of the board on e8, or it will castle kingside. It cannot go to the queen side. So Vishy already begins his attack, building his attack on the king side. Knight a5 is a very logical response to this move because this knight is heading to c4. As many times in the Sicilian, black is using the semi-open c file and to place a knight on c4. That's what many times favors black, because imagine that once this knight lands on c4, white will have to give up a bishop for that knight. And if we don't capture this knight, if we don't want to capture it, it will already be attacking our queen. We have to remove the queen. It will be attacking the e3 bishop as well, and also the b2 square. So that's annoying that our king will start to be under attack. Most of the times you will capture this knight as soon as it lands on c4. So keep the light square bishop on the f1 a6 diagonal, because you will want to capture the knight on c4. In this position, it was already possible to go g5, but instead Vishy played a prophylactic move, king b1, that we already discussed this the other time. Many times when you castle queenside, I would say almost all the time when you castle queenside, you will use one tempo for placing the king on b1 or b8, because that's where the king is safer. From here the king is protecting the a2 square as well, and it steps out of the c5. So it's useful to place the king there. After b5, Vishy opted for bishop d3. This move surprised me a bit because knight c4 is coming anyway, so he will have to lose a tempo. He has just moved the bishop and then he captures on c4, but he says that he doesn't mind it, because if black doesn't play this move, then we have developed the bishop, we connected the rooks, the rook will go, the d rook can go to g1, and then h4, g5, h5, g6, those pawns are launching, they are going forward. And if not, well, he says that knight c4 bishop takes is still a position that favors white, and it's true. White is better in this position. White has more space and he is ahead in development. So yeah, it's even possible to lose a tempo by playing bishop d3. Then a few years later, some other players tried a3, and then after knight c4 bishop takes, we reached a similar position as in Vishy's game, but with the pawn on a3. It depends whether white thinks if a3, having a3 on the board is a pro. In this position, it's something that favors white or not. Anyway, let's see the game, because after bishop d3, knight c4, bishop takes, rook takes happened in the game. But I want to ask you, what do you think about b takes? Because whether rook takes keeps the c file, so now black still has the semi-open c file. But if he captures with the b pawn, that's also quite an interesting option. He closes the c file but opens the b file, and I would be a bit scared with white. Of course, there's nothing serious going on. White's position is better. Simply, you should be careful. Also thinking about your king and the safety of your king. So after b takes c4, there's nothing going on against our king yet, and we can just go forward on the king side with g5. And after knight h5, I want you to find a move. This will be the first time when you need to think. So in this position, you need to tell me what to do about this h5 knight, because in the previous session, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, we discussed this g5 push, and in all those positions the knight went to d7. Of course, in this position there was no knight d7. It's not possible. And just by placing the knight on h5, everything changes. We cannot go for the standard pawn pushes because, well, you can push h4, but what's next? This pawn is not going any further. And if this pawn is not going any further, then the g pawn is not going any further either. So we should slightly alter our plan. Of course, we still want to attack on the king side, but we really need to do something about this h5 knight. So now the task is, after g5, knight h5, in this position, what do you think? What's the best way to do something about this h5 knight? How to kick it out, how to kick it away from h5, how to exchange it, how to eliminate it, how to make it leave the h5 square where this knight is blocking the way of our pawns. So it is the first time today when you really need to think. Let me bring up the time to think. Where is it? So clumsy. I am so clumsy, guys. I put here a lot of things and I cannot find my time to think. There it is. Time to think. Well done, guys. Of course, it is the maneuver knight e2, knight g3, and it is very important which knight goes to e2. So let's see the two options. We can go either with the d knight or with the c knight. And I've seen that most of you have said knight d e2, which is the correct solution. So congratulations, but let's see why we need to leave the d4 square where this knight is a king. It's very good to have the knight in the center. So why shall we move it away from the center and go to e2 with it? Well, let's see the reason. We want to go to g3 with one of the knights because once we get to g3 with the knight, this knight on h5 will have to capture the g3 knight, or black will have to play something like g6. If he plays g6, he will weaken his pawn structure. We can capture on h5, we will double his pawns. That's gonna be a horrible pawn structure for black. And if he captures on g3, then we will capture h takes g3, opening the h5 for the rook. So in both cases, we win. Now the real question is which knight goes to e2. I've already mentioned this, but we really need to see the difference between knight d e2 and knight c e2. Because one move is good and the other is bad. Not that it's losing, but the idea is bad. So knight d e2 is the correct move, and it's surprising because the knight is good on d4. We like to have the knight in the center, but it's important to realize that it's more important in this position to have the knight on c3 than to keep the other one on d4. And the reason is quite simple if we think about it. Knight c e2, driving this knight to g3. Let's say black castles. And here, if in this position we go knight g3, this is what we wanted. Wow, we're gonna capture this knight, or he will have to capture on g3. Everything is great. Don't forget about the opponent's plans. The opponent also has some ideas, and he wants to attack your king. So let's not forget about the opponent's counterplay on the queen side and blunder moves like c3. After which it is black who is better. He's gonna be ahead in his attack on the queen side. So please, 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 please always remember that your opponent is playing for something. He also has a plan, and he will want to carry out that plan if you let him do it. Let's not move the c3 knight away from there. We need that knight blocking the c pawn and protecting our king. That's why in this position, knight d e2 is the correct move. And after this move, well, it doesn't matter what black plays. Castle, kingside, for instance, knight g3, and as I said, here you either weaken your king with moves like g6, that's horrible, look at the black king, or you have to play this move, after which we are so happy having an h1 rook that hasn't been moved, but it's already attacking, and also the queen is coming to the h5, so this is quite a desperate position for black. That's why knight d2 is a great move. This would have happened in case of b takes c4. So after b takes c4, white would have played g5 and then knight d e2. Very good. This is how white would have an advantage. That's why Timman played rook takes c4, keeping the c file and hoping for some moves like b4 or trying to counterattack in the center once he castled. Let's see what happened in the game. Knight c e2. And now you might say, like, what are you doing, Anna? You've just told us that we need this knight on c3. We should move the other knight to e2. Well, not here. This is a different position. There's no pawn on c4. There's no c3 push. So in this position, what black has is the semi-open c-file. But our knight on d4 is just perfectly placed to protect our king, because the c2 square, the most important square, is controlled by our d4 knight, so we do not need to keep the knight on c3. We can maneuver this knight to g3. We can carry out this maneuver, and the other knight will be in the center, attacking and defending at the same time. So it's a great piece on d4. That's the difference how this position should be handled with the rook on c4 and with the pawn on c4. So always make sure that you pay attention to these differences, because once you calculate bishop takes c4, you need to see both moves coming, and you shouldn't really think that I will play the same way against no matter what my opponent does, I will do this, 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 and this. No, it matters a lot what the opponent plays, especially if those moves are pawn moves, because they changed the structure. So the pawn structure has been altered. Now there's a b file, not a c file, and in the other position black has a c file and not a b file. That's a big difference. Always pay attention to these differences. So knight ce2 is a great move here. That's what Vishy played. He's already preparing this knight maneuver, heading to g3. Even without the knight on h5, you need more pieces on the king side if you want to attack on the king side. Castle g5, and after knight e8, well, you know that after knight h5, what would have instantly appeared on the board was a knight on g3, and this position, as I said previously, this g6 move is really weakening. Here, maybe the easiest option for white to continue is to fix this weakness on h4 and then play knight e2, knight g3, and knight takes h5, which would mean a pawn up for white. And also look at that black king. That's a weak piece. True that the g file is not open, but I prefer white's king a lot more than this black king. No g pawn, no g7 pawn, and the h5 pawn will fall. That's a weakness. So after g5, knight e8, this is what happened in the game, and h4, very natural move. Launching those pawns, that's what we want. So soon it will be your time to think, because after, let's say, in this position, if e5, of course we would play knight f5. That's a great square for the knight. That's why black decided to go queen c8, and his plan is e5. So after e5, we don't have the possibility of playing knight f5 anymore, because he wants to capture it twice. He would win a pawn. And here, I let you think, because there are many good moves, but I want to see which one would you prefer here, Vishy's move or a different move. Let's see. Alright, let's see if you played Vishy's move or you played an even better move, because in this position, at least according to the engine, the move h5, which many of you have said, so congratulations guys, h5 is of course a great move. That's what we want, g5, h5 and g6. We want to open files against black's king, we want to open the king side and mate the black king. That's our plan, that's our strategy in this position. But we need to see what happens after moves like e5. That's what black wanted, that's why he played queen c8. So we need to retreat the knight. We don't want to go knight f5 because black will just capture it twice. So the only square that's available is the b3 square. And after knight b3, you should really think what happens after a5. I know that pawn is hanging. We can capture it with the queen and also with the knight. But okay, let's not capture it with the queen, because you should always pay attention to the opponent's counterplay and his threats. He is really attacking the c2 square, so we don't want to move this queen away from d2. But we can take this pawn with the knight, and we should. Because if we don't accept this pawn sacrifice, I know that this move is like, yeah, we are winning a pawn, but at the same time, aren't we opening the a5 for black? True, but if we leave this pawn alive, that's even more dangerous, because this pawn will be pushed to a4 and a3, just like the plan we are carrying out against black's king. Well, black can do the same. He's copying our idea. He's gonna play a4, a3, trying to weaken the white king as much as possible. So if you can avoid this, then do it. Let's capture this pawn, not for the sake of having a pawn up, but just to prevent a4, a3. And after rook a4, it seems like everything is under control, but we really need to be precise, because, for instance, moves like b3 are still good. We are almost trapping the black rook on a4. He can only go rook a3, and in this position, for instance, queen b4 is the best move, and we might start celebrating that we are a rook up, or he has to capture the knight on a5. That would mean an exchange up. But before you start celebrating, make sure that you calculate all the possibilities for black, because rook takes a2 looks desperate, but it's quite a good attempt for black. If you capture this rook, just let me show how dangerous the counterplay can be. Rook takes a2, king takes a2. Now this position is already preferable for black. After queen takes c2 check, king a1, queen takes e2, and moves like rook e1, the e3 bishop was hanging, queen f3. Black is an exchange down, but he has 2 pawns for the 2 pawns and a piece for the rook, and he's threatening to play f5, opening the position. And look at the white king. That's a naked king, so we don't want to have such an unprotected king. And that's why, even in positions when it looks like the opponent's play is desperate, he's just losing a piece, losing a rook, losing an exchange, make sure that you calculate those desperate attempts, because moves like rook takes a2 can really be dangerous. So make sure that you pay attention to your king, and after rook takes a2, you need to be cool and calm and play the move, not king takes a2, but knight c3, after which this rook is still hanging, but there's no queen c2 coming, so this position is winning for white, because now we will really capture the rook. But this is complicated. I know it's not easy to see all these moves coming. All I want you to understand is that you really need to pay attention to the opponent's threats. So even desperate moves like a5, rook a4, and then rook a3, like what's that rook doing on a3? Weird. And if you want to capture the rook and he plays rook takes a2, then you really need to see this before you play queen b4, because if in this position you have to capture the rook, then your position is getting worse. And it's not you who is attacking, but the opponent. So make sure that you stay calm and you calculate precisely. Attack and defense are a lot about precision in calculation. So make sure that you take into account all the possible attempts, all the possible move candidates, and you calculate them well, because if you miss one move, just one tiny detail, it might change the whole evaluation of the position. So in attacking on both flanks, it's all about dynamic play. Everything is sharp, everything depends on one tempo many times who wins. That's why we have to be really precise. Let's go back to the position, because after queen c8, h5 was a good move, as you guys have said, and this position, even if it looks messy, it would have been good for white. Instead, Vishy played a lot calmer move, b3, because he wants this rook to leave the c4 square. It's an active piece on c4, and he says that I prefer your rook to go back. So b3 weakens our king slightly on the dark squares, but at the same time it makes the opponent's piece less active. So it has its pros and cons. Rook c7 was played in the game, and now knight f4. So h5, of course, once again was an option, but what Vishy is doing is to bring his pieces first. I mean, he already pushed g5, h4, that's true, but before he pushes those pawns even further, he starts bringing his knights as well. And knight f4 seems like it steps into a fork with e5, but it's never an option. e5 is a bad move, because knight d5 attacks the e7 bishop and the c7 rook. And here, after bishop d8, I want you to think a bit, because I've been explaining all these lines. I know it's been quite unclear, quite complicated to see everything coming, but I want you to tell me what's the best move here for white in this position. What would you play here? Good job, guys. Most of you did not fall for my trick, which was the tempting move is of course knight takes c7, but we shouldn't really enter that line after knight takes c7. Black can capture on d4. Now the c7 knight is hanging and the e3 bishop too. This is a mess, and this position is close to equal for the engine, but for us humans it's just a mess. It's a very complicated position, but what is sure that white doesn't have an advantage in this position. Everything is hanging. Black will capture one more piece for the rook, so let's not capture the rook. I know it's tempting, but after sorry, I need to go back to the position. After bishop d8, the best move is the simple knight f5. That rook is still hanging on c7, and we are threatening knight e7 check as well, which would win the queen. So yes, we are winning material after knight f5. Even if this knight is taken, that's a different thing. It's not like when our knight is taken on d4 and our bishop would be hanging on e3. So in this position, you can either just capture the bishop, or you can capture the rook here. And now the f5 bishop is also hanging, not only the c7 knight, so we are winning an exchange. But it was very important to note that knight takes c7 is just way too early. I know it's tempting, but this knight on d5 is great. So even if we don't win the rook, even if we don't win an exchange. Why is it so difficult for me to pronounce an exchange? An exchange. I'll practice. An exchange. This position is just awesome. Look at our knights. We have a beast on d5, another beast on f5. So even if we don't win material, which is not true because we are winning material, but even if we did not win material, I would love to have this position with white in all my games, because look at this position. Those knights are monsters. We are ahead in the attack on the king side, so we have nothing to complain about in this position. This is an awesome position. That's why after knight f4, of course, black did not play e5. Timman saw that he cannot play e5 because of knight d5. He went for rook c3. Now that the knight has left from e2, the c3 square is not covered. Anyway, these are just attempts. Maybe he could have tried, instead of rook c3, which seems to be a bit slow, and I don't see exactly what he wants after rook c3, he could have tried a5. Once again, the same idea. This pawn is hanging, but if white captures this pawn, that means that white has opened the a file. We are a pawn up, but we don't really want this pawn up. We want to have a safe king. We prefer to have less pawns. We would prefer to sacrifice the g pawn and the h pawn, but attack and open those g and h files against black's king, instead of having a pawn up and having to defend. But if queen takes a5 after bishop d8, this is a mess once again, because we could even capture the b5 pawn, but now careful about this nasty bishop. It looks like bishop d8 is a passive move, but it isn't. Black is preparing a discovered attack, and this position is once again becomes complicated. It's unclear, and black has counterplay. This is what we don't want. So after a5, the best thing to do for white is to ignore that pawn. Yes, it will go to a4, and maybe then he will play a takes b3, but we should accept it. When you castle to the opposite flank, your king will be under attack too, so you really need to be calm and accept the fact that your king will be attacked too. It's not just about attacking the opponent's king and nothing bad will happen to your king. Unfortunately, it's attack on both flanks, so let's just go ahead with our plan. Let's bring a rook to the g file. We have one rook on the h file, the other rook on the g file. This is how you should place those rooks, and then launch the pawns even further ahead. h5, g6, that's our plan. So black goes a4, that's what he wants, and we go h5. Or you can even go g6 first in some positions, maybe here as well, g6, f takes to sacrifice this pawn, and then h5 comes with a tempo. It all depends on this position, if after g5 black can close the position, but I believe that white has this piece sacrifice knight g6, but if this is all too complicated, then just play after a4, h5, and we are threatening g6. If black captures this pawn, you need to tell me, how do we recapture on b3? We have three options. Which one is the best in this position? Maybe it's an easy question, maybe not, just let me know. let's see if your answers were correct. In this position, none of the options is a losing one. Good news. So no matter what you have picked, your position will still be playable at least, or it will be still better. But there's one option out of the three which is clearly better. And that is C takes b3. And the reason is, first of all, black is attacking on the c file. That was a pawn on c2 which he was attacking, and yes, we are protecting this pawn, but if we capture with the c pawn, if things go dangerous on the c file, we will always have the option of bringing back the rook and exchanging the pieces, the heavy pieces of black on the c file. So if everything, if something goes wrong with our plan on the king side, we can still go back with the rook to c1 and eliminate danger against our king. So it's good to have the c file. We can always bring the rook there and exchange pieces. Secondly, after capturing with on b3 with the c pawn, we have opened the second rank for the queen. So another vulnerable spot in the king side for us. On the queen side, I mean next to our king. In this position, if we capture with the a pawn, it's true that we don't have this a2 pawn anymore, but the a file opens, and if black manages to bring his queen to the a file and his rook to the a file, he will be threatening mate with queen a1, and if we protect the a1 square, then the a2 square is still there. So this is getting tough to protect this position, to protect our king. I'm not sure who's better in this position anymore, because look at this open a file, and we don't have any piece covering the a1 square nor the a2 square. On the other hand, if we capture with the c pawn, the queen is protecting the a2 square, so even if black builds up an attack by playing queen a6, rook a7, we still can tell him, now what? What do you want? I'm protecting the a2 pawn. And he cannot do anything on the c file either. As I said, it's all covered. He cannot play rook c2, he cannot play rook c1. We are covering the most important squares, so he cannot touch our king. C takes b3 is a very good move because we protect the a2 pawn, so the a file. We are preventing the attack on the a file, and we are also covering all the important squares on the c file, and we can always come back to the c1 square with the rook if necessary, but we prefer not to. Of course, we prefer to attack on the king side, so this is what would have happened in case of a5. But let's see the game, because we don't have so much time left before the thematic tournament, and I want to show you how the game finished because it's beautiful. You will love it, I'm sure. At least I love it. So let's see what happened. Rook c3, rook dg1, and after b4, of course, h5. Let's go. Our rooks are great. g1 rook, h1 rook, and we are just advancing the pawns until we manage to open the g and h5. The more files open, the better. We want to kill the g8 king. That's what we want. Knight c7. And now, of course, this is something that you have learned previously, but I still want you to tell me, what's the best move here for white? This is our topic. I love you guys. Of course, the move is g6. Thank you for learning in these sessions. Thank you for remembering what we have seen in previous games and what we studied together. This is why this makes sense. So thank you guys. I really appreciate that you are such enthusiastic students and you remember the most important plan in this position. With the pawn on g5 and the pawn on h5, we push g6. And we want to open those files. So if black plays what happened in the game, bishop f6, then we're gonna go, your turn again. Well done, everyone who said h6, because it's important that this is what we want after g6. If black doesn't capture the pawn on g6, we will see what would have happened in case of f takes g6. But if he doesn't care about our pawn on g6, what we want is to push the other pawn as well, h6. And the reason is easy. I mean, easy if you know the idea. All we care about is opening files, so we don't mind losing a pawn or two for the sake of opening the position. What would have happened in case of g takes first and then h6 is, first of all, black is not forced to capture this h7 pawn. In the previous session, if you were here, we saw that many times black can try to hide behind our own pawn, so he's using the h7 pawn as a shield. This is one thing you need to take into account after capturing on h7, that maybe the opponent will not even want to take this pawn. And yes, we are a pawn up, but this is a pawn up that if we enter an endgame, he will immediately capture the pawn. So he's using this pawn as long as things are dangerous against his king. But once we exchange queens, once we will say, oh, I'm a pawn up, I'm gonna win the endgame, he will capture the pawn on h7. This is a half that pawn on h7, so he's using it as a shield. The other thing is that if he captures, maybe in this position it's better to capture. I don't know. This position is still, of course, better for white. But the problem is that with moves like h6, we are not obliging black to open the position. So he will not be as nice as to let us either take this pawn on g7 or to capture on h6, after which even moves like rook takes h6 would win. I'm pretty sure about this. So yeah, this is just mate in 2 after bishop h4 and queen takes. That would be beautiful, but please count on the best possible defense by the opponent. So after h6, he would play g6. This is important. He wants to keep the position closed. He doesn't want to get mated. So for him, the opposite of our plan is his strategy. He doesn't want to let us open files, ranks, diagonals, anything against his king. He doesn't want it to be open. He wants to keep the position as close as possible. So of course he will respond to h6 with the move g6, after which it's not clear how to continue with white. How can we open the g file? We should start thinking about some sacrifice on g6, but if it doesn't work, then how do we open it? Even if you prepare it with moves like queen g2, I think it's bad because this bishop is hanging on the first place. Secondly, after knight takes g6, black once again is not forced to take this. So this is a mess, and just do not let the opponent fix the pawn structure after h6, g6, and then he can even protect this g6 square with the rook if necessary and hide his king under our h6 pawn. So after g6, bishop f6, well done everyone who said h6. This is how we want to break through. We don't care about the pawns, we don't care that this pawn can be taken, and this is what happened in the game f takes g6, because here we have opened the h file by playing h takes g7, and now if bishop takes g7, we simply play queen h2, and who will protect the black king? He's missing a knight from f6, a knight that would protect the h7 square. He cannot move the h-pawn because the g6 pawn would be hanging too. All our pieces are great, and we don't even care that our bishop is hanging on e3, because everything goes with a check or mate. Queen takes h7, queen takes g6, then the bishop on g7 will be hanging. Black's position is lost, completely lost here, believe me. After h takes g7, what Timon played was rook f7, but here it is your turn to find the spectacular killing blow that Vishy played in the game. So white to move and win the game. You guys must have learned a lot from my lovely colleague Miss Tactics, because you instantly set the move rook takes h7, which is a rook sacrifice that wins on the spot. Congratulations, guys. Amazing move. Rook takes h7. And the idea is that, of course, this rook has to be captured. If not, we play rook h8 or we just capture the pawn on g6. Everything falls apart, so black has to accept this sacrifice. And after queen h2 check, there's no king g2. That would be queen h8 mate, of course. And if he takes on g7, then in this position, what would you play here? Because there are certain options, tempting options, like rook takes g6 check, knight h5 check, or knight takes g6. Which one is the best out of these three moves? I think all three are good, but which one do you think is the most forcing? Let's not allow black's king escape from the king side. Well done, guys. Vishy played knight takes g6. That's the best move in this position. Yes, it's true that rook takes g6 would win too, but then you have to calculate what happens after king f8. And now here in this position, you need to find the move rook takes f6, after which you sacrifice just even more and then checks and then bringing the knight. This is not that simple to see that white is winning in this position, I believe, because you need to see after knight e8 what's going on. I'm not giving mate, I'm not winning the queen. This isn't so simple, so always try to choose the easiest option for you. It doesn't have to be the most aesthetic, the most beautiful way to win, but knight takes g6 just does the job. It doesn't let the black king go to f8, which is the most important in this position. You want to keep this king on the g file, and we cut the king on the h file. If he cannot go to the f8 square, then we're gonna be mating him. The king cannot hide, the king cannot escape. So always make sure that you cut the opponent's possibilities to the least possible. Let's not let him escape. Let's not let him try to find some wonder defense. After knight takes g6, life is simple. We are threatening things like queen h6 check and knight e7 check, which would win the queen, at least if we are not giving mate. So what black did here was rook takes e3, and after knight e7 check, yeah, we are not giving mate anymore, but we have won the queen, and even more material will drop after queen takes d6. So this position is completely lost and Timman has resigned. Let's go once again back to this moment where we are winning and white had to find rook takes h7. Seems like this move is so easy for you guys, but in a game you need to calculate. So always make sure that, yes, this, you feel like this has to be the move, but calculate. Make sure that after king takes g7, you also see that if rook takes g6, king f8, you need to know what's going on in this position. It's not so clear. We don't really have checks. If queen h6, the king can go to e7, for instance. So there are many options, and if you can reduce the opponent's possibilities by playing knight takes g6, not letting the king escape, it doesn't matter that it's not a check. Sometimes a threat is a lot better than a check, because where can the king hide? Nowhere. Before the thematic tournament begins, I hope that you like this game, but let me show you just this crucial moment when we push g6. This is our topic, and this is what you will have to do in the thematic tournament, so I hope that you remember this idea. The pawn storm and breaking through with g6. Here, if this pawn is captured, if f takes g6 is played, then we will just simply capture this pawn. We have opened the h file, and if black plays h6, saying that, okay, you open the h file, but you can do no harm to me, it's not true, because after the move, the simple move knight h5, we are threatening with so many things. knight takes g7, bishop takes h6. One of these piece sacrifices will win the game because black doesn't have any defenders against any defenders on the king side. The only piece that he has next to the king is the rook, but the rook is not protecting neither the g7 square nor the h6 square, so we will sacrifice on h6 or on g7 or both. Who knows? All you need to do is to calculate it, but this position is winning, so black cannot close the position by playing f takes, h takes and h6 because we have way too many pieces on the king side. That's why Vishy brought the knight from c3 to e2, then to f4, and it would have ended up on h5. So it was a very useful attacking piece that came from the queen side, and also the d1 rook went to g1. So remember how he brought his pieces to the king side, not just pushing those pawns. Of course you need to push g5, h5, g6, but you also need pieces to give mate to the opponent. It's not enough to push the pawns. Now let's see how are we doing about the thematic tournament, because it's about to begin. And I see that Magnus has won his game. Thank you guys for informing me. Of course, I'm following the Norway chess tournament every day, but now that I'm live, I couldn't really check the games, and I see that he's giving press conference right now. So of course, if you prefer that to the thematic tournament, I can understand it. It's the world champion talking about how he won today. As far as I know, it was a great preparation by John Ludwig Hammer that he used against Kramnik, so check out that, of course. And we will begin the thematic tournament in 1 minute. Oh my. Let's switch to the thematic tournament site. I'll copy you the link. Yes, this is it. Miss Strategies opposite side Castlink thematic tournament, unrated, beginning in 30 seconds. So guys, please sign up right now because the time is running out after 22 seconds. In 22 seconds, it's gonna be closed and you cannot play the tournament. It's unrated, and what we will do is practice what we have learned today and the previous session, and I'll be giving you personal advice on how to improve your chess. So I think it's a very useful tool. Make sure that you sign up in 4, 3, 2, 1. It's over. I'm sorry for everyone who did not manage to sign up in time, but next time you should really be quick because we have begun with 8 participants. The other time I think we were more than 20 players. It can be seen that the big guns are playing right now, so mainly the Norway chess tournament, but as I said, the Chinese championship, the Women Grand Prix, the Italian team championship, and tomorrow even we have the Ultimate Blitz Challenge with Kasparov, Caruana Nakamura and Wesley so many big events. I understand that instead of playing you are watching those events. I will do the same, but not today, because today is about middle game strategy with me. So I hope that you are here playing the games, and let's talk about the games, because I think we already have round one pairing. This is a position not from today. I was tricky, I know. This is a position that we studied the previous session, so 2 weeks ago. But I believe that you guys are such great pupils that you know everything that I have mentioned, and the idea is the same. So it is the same that we have seen today in Vishy's game, that it's about the pawn storm with g4, h4, g5, h5, g6. So even if it's not the very same position that you have seen today, this is the same pattern. And what matters is that not that you know the game by heart. I don't care about your memory capacity. What I care about is how much you can learn from the games I show you. If you remember the patterns, the ideas, that's what the middle game shows are about. Ideas, patterns that you can apply in your games in the middle game. What happened in this game? Devil 70 is not here. So let's see another game. It's Toby 1896 against their captain. And Toby played Queen f2. So our starting position is this. And here remember that there's something going on against the c2 square. So yes, it's a good idea to protect it. Maybe not immediately, because in the game we have seen it was h4. Yes, we are going for this attack. And after b5, when black is already threatening b4, the knight cannot jump away from c3 because the c2 pawn is hanging. So in that moment you need to protect the c2 square. And queen f2 is one of the options. But what we have seen was a very interesting move, rook h2. I wonder if anybody will play that in their games. If not, no problem. As I said, it's not a memory check. Let's just play the game. Queen f2 is a good move, and after queen c6, h4. This is actually something very similar because h5, b5 has been played b4. Now the knight can move away because the queen is protecting the c2 square. That's very important. And knight a4, blocking the a pawn, so there's no a5, a4 coming. I really like how white played, and of course for black it's not easy because this position is worse for black. White is ahead in attack, but all of you guys will play with white as well, so don't worry. And this is unrated, so all we are doing here is practicing. Don't worry about your rating, don't worry about losing this position with black because this is a worse position. But I think that their captain is fighting very well because he is counterattacking in the center. And as I said, when there's a flank attack, so flank attack for white here means we are attacking on the king side. Black has two options. Black can counterattack on the queen side, so on the other flank, or he can counterattack in the center. And if he manages to counterattack in the center, that many times is very powerful because you know that the center is the most important part of the chessboard. So if you can create attack in the center, if you can control the center, that's a big deal. So I think that d5 was a really good move for black, and I like how their captain is playing. Maybe that's the reason why in this position after b4, white could have considered playing knight d5. So with that move, you make sure that this d6 pawn will never be advanced. Maybe knight a4 was not the best here. I said that it's blocking the a pawn, but perhaps what I forgot myself as well is that this d5 push is more annoying than a5, a4. So after e takes, bishop takes, Toby sacrificed an exchange with rook takes, queen takes, because maybe he believed that he will have knight b6, but there's this knight on d7 protecting the b6 square. Or he wants to play bishop c4 and then g6. No, he goes bishop d3. Well, it's an interesting sacrifice. I don't say it's bad because white's pieces are very active. So bishop d3, threatening bishop e4, and also pointing at the h7 square. This is still a complicated game. I don't know what the engine would say about this position if the exchange sacrifice. What's wrong with this word? I don't like the word exchange. Exchange. I'll practice pronouncing it. So I don't know what the engine would say about this exchange sacrifice, but I'm sure that in a game between two humans, this is an interesting option because we are not the computer. We play just human moves. Many times we can be scared, we can be afraid, we can be, or the opposite, we can be very optimistic about our attack even when it's not objective. So just play the game, just enjoy the game. This is about enjoying chess. Even if you play sometimes not the objectively best moves, it doesn't matter, it's not a problem. As long as you play the moves you feel like, I think it's good. Just enjoy playing chess. Let's see the other games as well because this is interesting, this position. But I want to see what happened between John 25 and Brain Boy. Oh, something went really wrong for John. I'm sorry, John, what happened? Let me see. So h4 was played, b5, queen d2, protecting the c2 square, knight b6, bishop h3. It's not a bad idea because I think you want the d5 square for your knight, but I'm afraid that black will not capture on h3. So if you have to capture the bishop on e6, that means that after f takes e6, the d5 square will not be an outpost for our knight anymore because the pawn will be protecting it from e6. So that's why in this position, instead of bishop h3, it's better to go for the attack h5, g6. That's what we learned, and that's what really makes this position better for white because white is ahead in the attack on the king side, h5, g6. And let's see how black can cope with that. How can he protect his king? So instead of playing positional, this is a very positional move, bishop h3, I think, unless you start launching an attack later. We'll see. Knight d5, knight takes, pawn takes, and after exchanges, yeah, we have exchanged several pieces. That's the other problem of the bishop h3, knight d5 moves. When you want to attack, you really need to have pieces on the board. Of course, the queen is the most important attacking piece, but still, I need the other pieces too, at least me. The more pieces, the better, so knights, bishops, rooks. The more attacking pieces you have, the better. And the more, on the other hand, when you are defending, you do want to exchange pieces, because this is how it works. The less pieces are there on the board, the less dangerous the position is. So that's why in this position, I'm not sure that white is better anymore, because he wasted some time for playing bishop h3, knight e5, and you know that about when there's a flank attack, you need to be quick. Being quick is the most important. Of course, playing the right moves too, but you have to be so quick, because if you are not quick, the opponent will be faster than you by playing a5, a4, and his attack will be ahead of your attack. It really matters who gives mate first, so make sure that you are quick and you are the one who gives mate first, not the opponent. a5, h6, h5, a4. Both players are attacking, so it's a very interesting position. But I'm afraid that here black is ahead of development. His attack is ahead because he has already opened the a file. He already had the semi-open c file, and white hasn't managed to push g6 yet. So this is a problem, because here now it is black who is attacking. Rook a8, and yeah, we don't have time to play g6 here with white, because rook a2 is coming. It's gonna be mate in few moves, mate in 3 moves. So that's the threat. Rook a2, rook a1, and the other rook goes to a2. That's why he played rook b1, but after rook a2, yeah, you really need to try to hide your king, but it's a problem when you need to play moves like rook b1. Now this rook on b1 is very passive. All it does is to protect the king. It's important to protect the king, but now white's pieces are passive, and it is black who is attacking and who has the initiative. So rook c8, now the c2 pawn. Oh, why? Rook b2, queen a5. And after rook h4, queen a3, white resigned because this position is lost. The b2 rook will fall unless you play something like c3, c4, but in that case too, after b takes c3, the rook falls. And I believe that even if he doesn't blunder the rook after queen a5, he had to play rook takes a2, but after queen takes e2, that position looks really dangerous. Queen a1 is the threat, mate in 1, so you have to go something like queen d3, protecting the b3's pawn, and also you give a square, you free the d2 square for your king. Anyway, in that position I would still prefer black, but I think white is not getting mated at least. So rook a2 would had to be played, and then queen d3. But still, the problem is that, John, I am telling you, and also for anybody who wants to learn from this position, that here, after knight b6, you should push those pawns. h5, g6, open the h and g file, at least one of them, and attack black's king, because if you look at the g8, king, queen. What am I saying? I'm getting crazy. So that's a king on g8, not a queen. The g8 king is quite lonely. There's no knight on f6, no knight on f8. The bishop is not on g7, it's on e7. There are not many defenders close to black's king, if any. So the e6 and the e7 bishop are there, but they are not very useful protecting the g7 and h7 squares. h5, g6, and white is ahead in the attack, so that's the way to play. Let me see the other game. Let me win against Chessinator. Let me won the game with white, and it was h4, b5, and here, yes, you need to protect the c2 square. Queen d2 is a good option too. What we have seen was rook h2, but also queen f2 is possible. Depends on you, depends on what you prefer. Queen d2, g6, but g6 doesn't stop the attack. It stops g6, but it doesn't stop the h5 from being open, because h5 is now quite painful. King g7. I understand that Chessinator was trying to bring some defense to the h5, so after h takes, f takes. I thought you wanted to play h takes and then rook h8, so if h takes, I cannot move on this board, but if h takes and then rook h8, that could have been a possibility if you want to defend on the h5. I thought that's why you played g6 and king g7, so that you could protect the h5. But f takes I don't like that much, because after queen h2, rook h8, now instead of being able to exchange pieces on the h file, all that black is doing is having this rook on h8, a very passive piece, just to protect the h7 square. So imagine the very same position with the pawn on f7 instead of on h7. In that case, it would mean that there's nothing going on the h file, and black is threatening to exchange the rook on h1. So that would have been a big difference, having the pawn on f7 and not on h7. If your king is on g7 and you are able to bring the rook to h8, then it's possible to capture on g6 with the h pawn, with the idea of bringing the rook to h8. As long as you can exchange pieces, your defending options are better. Of course, the more pieces you exchange, the better, the safer your king will be. Queen h2, rook h8, it's really passive. And now Let me win plays really well, because it's true that we cannot push the g pawn, there's no h pawn anymore, and we can't give a check on h6, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. That's only a check. What he has to do is what he did, what he realized, that he needs to open the position even more. So he wants to open the a1, aj diagonal for his bishop. f4 is a very good move, because you either let the bishop go to d4, or you will need to allow a pawn break with f5. In both cases, white's position is really preferable. I think white is winning here. Bishop g4, rook d2, knight c5. Of course, black should try to create counterplay, but this position is very difficult. Also, there's this d5 hole in the position. That's how the position was, of course, but with the bishop on e6, at least this knight on d5 would always have been captured. But after bishop g4, knight d5, now this position is really bad. We have this monster on d5, and we are ahead in development. I always say development. We are ahead in the attack, not in development. b4 is an interesting move, because yeah, we are winning a piece, but it allows a5. Anyway, nothing happens because b takes. I'm seeing ghosts because I thought that black will have a takes b4. Yeah, sometimes I really blunder moves too. I think it happens to all of us, at least when you're tired. So yeah, b4 is a very good move. a5 is not a problem because we captured the piece with the pawn. So this is a piece up. Instead, black should have played queen b7 or queen... Oh, no, queen d7 I don't like either, because it steps into the d5. So queen b7 probably, but still, even if black doesn't blunder in this position, this position for black is really, really difficult. So I don't think that it's possible to hold it. If white plays like this, he played really well, playing queen h2, f4, then this position would have been lost anyway, even without losing the piece. Let's see the second round, because I believe we are already playing the second round. It's Serhat Sainman against Let Me Win on board 1. I think I managed to click on it. Let's see, let's hope. So h4, I hope that you can see the board correctly. Yeah, I believe. I don't see what you see, so I'm doing this blindfold. h4, b5, queen d2, protecting the c2 square. Nobody wants to play rook h2, which we learned in the previous session, but anyway, queen d2 is more natural for you guys, I believe, or queen f2. b4 and knight d5. Good, because we saw in the previous game that if the knight goes to a4, black might have the possibility of creating counterplay in the center. The center is so important, so make sure that you avoid pawn pushes like d5. Of course, you have to calculate it. I'm not sure it works. So what you need to calculate after knight a4 is pushing d5, and after e takes d5. The question is whether you can capture this pawn with the bishop, sacrificing the piece in order to make white play queen takes d5, and after queen takes c2. It might only be a check, because if the king hides, if he can play king a2, then we have sacrificed the piece for just one check. No good news. So yeah, maybe even knight a4 would have been a good move. And after knight a4, you can count on moves like knight c5. You should take that into account. So it's unclear, but I like knight d5 too. There's nothing wrong with knight d5. Bishop takes, e takes, and queen b7. Now h5, of course, white goes ahead with his attack against black's king, and a5, g6. So as you can see, black is attacking too, and against our king he's trying to build up an attack by pushing those pawns, but white is ahead with his king side attack. He has just pushed g6, so files will open on the king side, and even if a4 comes here, I'm not sure that g takes h7 is a move I would play, because as you guys know, this pawn can be used as a shield. So whether king takes and after h6 g6, or what happened in the game king h8, I want to hide my king under this pawn. So what we have learned is that many times it's a better idea, instead of capturing on h7 with a check, it's always tempting to give a check, I know, but instead of this tempting check, many times the best move is h6, just giving this pawn up on g6, because all you want is to open the h file. And after h6, tell me, how can black keep the position closed? No way, because he cannot put his pawn on the head of the g6 pawn, or something weird. Yeah, it's not possible. It's just illegal. You cannot put two pawns on the same square. Oh, that was really stupid, Anna. Anyway, the point is that white should play with the h6 here in this position, I believe, because after g takes, not that it's a bad move, of course, it's still a very interesting position, but after h6, here black can and should play what Latvian played, g6. So he tries to keep the position as closed as possible, and this is what would have not been possible after playing, if I can click correct, after playing h6 in this position. That's the difference. That's the thing I was trying to explain with very many silly attempts, phrases like putting the pawn on the head of the other pawn, sort of. So h6 is a good move in this position. Remember that you don't mind giving up the g6 pawn, but you do want to open the h file. Let's see what happened in the game, because it's still interesting. As I said, just it's not that easy to open the position anymore on the king side, and the a file is opening up. So black is attacking too. Some exchanges and c takes b3. I would be scared here, because it's true that black cannot go queen a7. Luckily we have this e3 bishop, because if not we would have got mated already. But queen b5 has the same idea. Next move is queen a5, and what do you do against this queen a1 mate? Oh my, in this position I would not be calm at all with the white pieces. What can you do against queen a5? Rook c1 is the only try, because as I said, when you have the c file open and you badly need to protect the king, you can and should exchange rooks on the c file. But does it help? Because if I play, okay, if you go queen a5 here with black, white will simply capture on c8, which is a check, and you have to go rook takes c8, so there's no other rook on the a file. I understand that, but still this position is quite unpleasant. And now the pawn was captured on h7, rook c7. Maybe black shouldn't have allowed this rook c7. First he could have played, instead of capturing the pawn, because that pawn will not escape. That pawn is half dead, as I said. Black could have played queen a5 first, covering the c7 square. So always pay attention to the opponent's ideas, to the opponent's threats. This rook c7 move is something that can be annoying, because a rook on the 7th is a good piece. Queen a5 would have prevented rook c7, and at the same time it would have built up this attack on the a file, which is what black wants to do. So queen a2 check would be a threat, and after king c2, rook c8 check, and after king d1, queen takes b3. I really like that position for black. Yeah, maybe I would have prevented this. Anyway, maybe he thought that this is not a big deal because he had this queen f1 check. Perhaps he's right. Perhaps queen a5 was not the best move. Maybe Latvian's move is better than what I was saying, and this position is really, really bad. So yeah, perhaps rook c7 was actually not a threat. I would have been considering it as a threat because it's an active move and the bishop is hanging on e7, but it's true that rook c7 abandons the back rank, so queen f1 is a very unpleasant check, and you either bring back the rook or you play queen c1, but in both cases either the f3 pawn falls. So if rook c1, then queen takes f3, and if queen c1, then queen d3 check is so annoying. The king has no square, and if queen c2, then the bishop was hanging on e3. Our bishop is hanging too, but then after rook takes e7, queen e1 check, queen c1, and rook a1 would have won the queen, so that was bad. And if rook c2, then this pawn falls. But what happened? Latvian has lost the game because I don't understand. This position is really good. Let me just quickly go through it. This position is winning for black. He must have missed something. Check. Rook c8. Oh. But maybe even like this. Okay, he gives up the f7 pawn in order to win the rook on c2. I would have preferred to protect this pawn first. Maybe with the move queen f5, that seems to be the safest in this position, and then I'm threatening rook c8. So he decided that he would attack it immediately and let white give checks and protect the rook. But okay, this position, I mean, even this let me win is just completely winning, because you can go for the pawn endgame, queen takes c2, and this pawn endgame is completely winning. What happened? He wanted to give mate, I think, and maybe he lost on time. Okay, he has won the rook, and I mean, in this position it's mate, rook a8 check. That's mate. Oh, let me win. What happened? You missed so many winning chances. Winning the pawn endgame, giving mate with rook a8. He took the rook, and now this perpetual, or no? There's no. I mean, the king. Where can you hide the king? I would not enter this line because it looks like you have perpetual. Okay, if queen h4, then queen h5 protects the king. No more checks. But queen f8. But how did he lose? Did he lose on time? I don't understand. No! No, please. Serhat, you are very tricky. So Serhat in a lost position, but okay, I think both players were short on time, because king d4 is a losing move. There's queen takes d6, winning the queen. But instead of queen takes d6, winning the queen on d1, Serhat played queen g4 check, which is like the last trick on the board. Well, queen takes d6 would have won the queen really, but queen g4 is just blunders the queen, and since Ladmivin did not realize it, he just immediately moved the king. His queen was lost. Oh, poor you, poor Ladmivin. Serhat, you could have seen queen takes d6, and then I would not feel so bad for Ladmivin. In this position after queen g6, you have to go king d5, of course. I'm sorry, but in Blitz it happens. So both of you guys were really fighting very well, and I appreciate that, because fighting chess and showing the spirit of that, not abandoning the game, not always believing, is something that's important. And you can save half point and even a full point, like Serhat saved a full point. He was completely lost and he managed to win the position because he kept on playing. So sometimes it's a good idea not to resign, and if you keep on playing, it's not just that you keep making moves and you're like, oh, I'm lost, I'm making moves, I'm just lost. No, if you keep on playing, if you do not resign, you should believe that your opponent will make a mistake. So don't just play on just for the sake of playing. Play on because you believe that maybe the opponent will make a mistake. So that's what happened in this game. I'm sorry for Ladmivin. Let's see round 3. We have their Devil 70 against Toby. Let me see this game, and I will also check the chat because I need my phone for that, so that I can see the screen. I don't have another computer here with me today. Yeah, just like that. But the other time too, I used my phone and it was pretty okay, so I can open the chat from my phone too. That's good. I hope that you guys have the Chess24 app on your mobile phones, and also you can just simply open it from your Explorer, or from whichever, is it called Explorer on the mobile? Anyway, you know that I'm bad at IT stuff, so you can just simply go to chess24.com on your phone, have the app that's useful for the tactics trainer and for the broadcast, for saving your games. But if you want to see the chat, then go to chess24.com from your phone. So let me see the chat. Oh yeah, Mikael said that he really hanged his queen, and that's how he lost the game. And their captain is saying that I should comment on his game. I will do it. Sorry, yeah, I was just so focused on this previous game that it really took all the time I had for that round. So let me see. Devil 70 against Toby. The game developed with h4, b5. Make sure that you see this threat, always. b4 is the threat, so after each and every move of your opponent, ask the question, what is his plan? What is his threat? Is he threatening something? And if he does, you need to find a way to prevent it, of course. b4 is the threat here. The c2 pawn would be hanging. That's why you need to play queen d2, queen f2, rook h2, or bishop d3. Bishop d3 was played here. That's the move I like the least. I don't want to criticize it much because it's a natural developing move, but in this position, I know it's difficult to believe, but the bishop is not bad on f1. And the reason is that you don't need to move this bishop in order to make use of your heavy pieces. The rook from h2, for instance, would be protecting the c2 square, and at the same time, it's helping your pawns, it's helping the pawn storm. h5, g6. You will open the h file eventually. So here it is not so bad to have the bishop on f1 as it would be in other positions. We always learn to develop all your pieces, move all your pieces. But sometimes it's good on the back rank too. Not always. Don't believe that I'm telling you that you should never develop your pieces. But here the f1 bishop controls the same number of squares from f1 as from d3, or it controls more squares from f1 than from d3, because on d3 it's kind of blocked. There's a pawn on e4 that's blocking its way. If there was no pawn on... I forgot I can make moves here too, of course, in the analysis mode. So if there was no pawn on e4, of course I would love to have the bishop on d3, but with the pawn on e4, it's unlikely that you will have this diagonal for the bishop in the near future. That's why I don't like bishop d3 much, and it steps into knight c5 too, so black can eliminate this bishop if he wants to attack the c2 pawn. Queen f2 was played, so you have to protect the c2 pawn with the queen too, and we have exchanged pieces. That's something that we don't really want when we are attacking. We want to have as many attacking pieces as possible. f4 is good because that's a pawn break too. That's of course very useful when we are attacking on the flank. h5 g6 was the other possibility, but here f4 is I think is a good move. But bishop c4, what's going on? We have learned, of course, that when you're attacking, sometimes you can sacrifice, especially pawns. I recommended pawn sacrifices, give up a pawn or two just to open the position against the opponent's king. But bishop c4, I believe black wants to open the b file, but wow, is this working? B takes. Yes, you have opened the b file, but are you giving mate? I'm not sure that I would believe in this attack for black, because yes, I need to move the rook, so rook d5 was played, or I can go rook d2, rook d1, and after rook b8 you can simply go bishop c1, I thought, but black white did not go bishop c1. He played king c1. I mean, that's not bad either. You allow queen takes b2 check, but after king d2 it seems like the king is okay on d2. Sometimes it can hide in the center, but I don't think it was necessary after rook b8. What's wrong with bishop c1? Am I missing something? I don't see it. I would have played bishop c1 protecting the b2 pawn, but maybe Devil 70 was afraid of some kind of a5, a4, a3, but that seems to be really slow. And also that pawn is hanging, so you can capture it on a5 if the pawn is bothering you. I would have played bishop c1 for sure, but let's see what happened in the game. King c1, queen b2. And if the king is fine on d2, this is a piece up. So in this way too, rook b3 of course is a good attacking move. Now you should do something about the c3 knight. Bishop d4 had to be played. Oh, then there's a problem. Then this position is not as good as I thought. So the king is not so safe on d2. Why bishop d4 is necessary? What about knight d1? If knight d1, there's no rook d3 because I can capture it with the rook. Although after c takes, the c file opens, so this position is not that clear. That's why I think after rook b8 there was no need to give up the b2 pawn. So maybe Devil 70 thought that the king on d2 is completely fine. There are no checks, that's true. But rook b3, because of the pin, this is a very annoying move, and you cannot protect the c3 knight. You have to move away with it. But if you move the knight, there's either c3 check or rook d3 check to open the c file. Perhaps it's still winning for white, but if you have to go bishop d4, then it's just giving back the piece. Okay, maybe still okay. We just gave back the piece up we had, so let's win the game again. But what's good for white, what I really like in this position, I actually have the bishop d4, so maybe it wasn't the best idea, at least because you have centralized pieces. You have this wonderful queen on d4, which is defending your king and attacking the opponent's king at the same time. And after h5, either g6 or h6, the black king will suffer. So it is once again white who is attacking. What happened in this game? Because it was such an interesting game. So many things happened. Now rook b5. What's going on if knight takes b5? Am I missing something? There are so many sacrifices in this game, but nobody wants to have material advantage. Neither Devil 17 nor Toby wants to have material advantage. You are sacrificing all the time, both of you. And as many times, instead of a sharp attacking position, we end up in an endgame after exchanging queens. But this endgame is very good for white because, well, it's a pawn down, that's true, but the bishop, the f8 bishop is horrible. That bishop is like a piece down. So if black doesn't manage to promote this a pawn, which is unlikely, then this endgame should be lost for black, because after rook e8, you cannot move the bishop. You cannot, and even without rook e8, you cannot move the bishop. But if I pin it, you can't even move the king. So the black king and the black bishop are like non-existent in this position. That's why this position is just really good, this endgame, with a pawn down, but it's a very superior endgame thanks to this f6 pawn and the h6 pawn. I wonder how it ended in a draw. There was no way to oh, you repeated moves here? Why you needed to give up the d5 pawn? If knight c3, then maybe you thought that the rook will go back to c7, but anyway, I prefer that the black has those passive pieces, but I don't want to give up the d5 pawn. Because now the g4 pawn will fall too. And if those pawns fall, then the bishop might get active one day. Rook e5. No. I don't like this, sorry. But you should keep the d5 pawn. You have a pawn down, that's not a problem, but don't give up the d5 pawn too, because that pawn restricts the opponent's position, especially after this move, rook e5. Exchanging rooks when this bishop is dead, thanks to our rook. The rook is pinning it, so even if he plays d5, the bishop will never, the bishop can never move, so you need to keep the rook on the board. But maybe he was afraid of rook takes g5. But in that case, I don't understand why you give up the d5 pawn. Anyway, I should see round 4, and I should definitely commentate on the game of their captain, because I haven't forgotten about you. It's just there are so many interesting positions that I get stuck with one game and then I just talk and talk and talk. You guys know that I can talk a lot. So h4 was played by their captain against let me win, and b5, queen f2. This is the most fashionable move in this tournament. Everybody wants to protect the pawn on c2 with the queen f2 or queen d2. Nobody really wants to play rook h2, which is an interesting move. Check the previous session with rook h2. That's I think it's a very good idea for white. Anyway, queen f2 is not a bad move, of course. Queen a5 and h5, knight f8. This is actually something that I had as a question in the previous strategy show, because yes, g6 is our plan, and one of you guys have asked me, well, what happens if black goes knight f8? That's actually, it was a very good question, because knight f8 prevents g6. But it also means that black is not attacking. So yes, knight f8 is a good defending move, but it doesn't help black's attack on the queen side, because normally you would want to have this knight on c5 or on b6 and then jumping to c4. Not with this pawn structure, but in general you want to have that knight on the queen side if you want to attack the white king. Playing knight f8 means that black is mainly focusing on preventing the white's attack. He's focusing on preventing white's attack and not on building up his attack. But as you know, prophylaxis is very important in chess, so maybe it's a good idea to play knight f8, prevent g6, and then move on the queen side. Let's see what happened in the game. Rook h2, rook c6, knight d5. It's true that like this that we cannot play g6, we need to find a different plan. Knight d5 could be. Also, we have seen In that game, I think I recommended bishop h3 and knight d5. So when black prevents your g6 push, the obvious plan, obvious for us because we have learned it, I don't think it's so obvious for everybody, especially pushing h6 right after g6. So if g6 is prevented, you can play for bishop h3, knight d5. It's a more positional way of playing, but because the position is slower, black is not attacking either, you can go for those moves. So knight d5 is good, I think. Bishop takes, e takes, rook c5. Everybody wants to sacrifice today. So black is sacrificing an exchange. I guess it was possible to play rook c8. I don't see... Bishop b6, queen b4. Am I... No, it's not trapped yet. Or rook h4. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. I did not see that coming. So, yes, rook c5 seems to be forced because if black wants to keep the rook with rook c8, then white has bishop b6 and after queen b4, rook h4 wins the queen? I believe so. Wow, there, captain, that was a brilliant plan. So knight d5 was a very strong move. I did not see this tactics coming because it's true that the a5 queen seems like it's attacking, but if there's no queen a1 check or something on the a2 square immediately, then because of the pawns on a6 and b5, this queen really lacks space and you might trap it. So rook c8, let me just put it on the board because it's beautiful. After rook c8, bishop b6, and I think it's true after queen b4, rook h4. The black queen is trapped. Wow, there, captain, that was brilliant. So after e takes d5, rook c5 is forced. Black is losing an exchange. After bishop takes, d takes, d6. It's not just an exchange, but also this d passed pawn. A very powerful passed pawn, so I would not want to be black here. I'm sorry for you, let me win, but their captain really played a good game here. Rook d8, though, is of course a good idea. The problem is that queen takes c5 is on the board. If not, this pin and capturing on d1 with a check and mate, that would have been a mate. D takes e7 and rook takes d1. But here, oh, there are some tricks, or not. Rook takes and queen e1 is the idea. King a2 and queen a5. So if king b1, then there would be a perpetual with queen e1 and queen a5. The only way to avoid the perpetual is by playing queen a3. That's what their captain did, but that means that we're gonna lose the rook. So after queen takes, rook takes d6. Now we have reached the position with an endgame with equal pawns. So no material up anymore. It's true that the bishop tends to be better in endgames where there are pawns on both flanks because the bishop is a lot faster and can control squares on both flanks at the same time. Not like the knight. The knight cannot do that. The knight aims for outpost. The knight is very good at exploiting weak squares. But still, this is not something that I guess this is not what white wanted after having an exchange up here. Bishop takes, d takes, and so d6 seems to be premature because of this beautiful idea that Latmivin has found. So there was this tactical possibility of capturing on d6 because of the queen e1 queen a5 checks. Wow, great game by both of you guys. So you both have found many interesting ideas, tactical motives, sacrifices. I'm amazed. I'm proud of both of you. So it was a very exciting game, and probably white was winning if he did not play d6 immediately, but d6 is such a tempting move, so I can't really blame their captain for playing d6. And even after d6, maybe then here queen takes c5 is bad, or if queen takes c5, then at least bishop takes c6. You shouldn't capture the bishop on d6. I know it's easy to say now because I have seen the reason. In the game, in a blitz game, it's not that obvious. So very well fought, both of you guys. I'm amazed, and I will see what happens in this rook endgame later on. Anybody can win it in a blitz game, for sure. But I will also check what happened in the game between Toby and Serhat, and also Chessinator against Devil 70. I will quickly go through these two games because they have finished already. started with queen f2, b5, f4. So instead of h4, h5, g6, you go for f4, also possible. I still believe that h4, h5, g6 is a very powerful attack. But let's see what happened in the game. Let's go through it very quickly and see the other game too. Ooh, f5 threatening f6, but the pawn on g5 is hanging and the rook on d2 is hanging. It's a mess as usual. Now the f7 pawn is hanging too, so bishop takes, e takes f7, king h8, and queen takes d2. 2 pieces for the rook and the pawn, I believe, if I can no pawn. It just seems to be a pawn because of this f7 pawn. It's quite an annoying pawn. If black cannot capture it, then it will be a problem for black for sure. Woo! Rook d8, the rook was attacking the d2 queen, but rook f1 was the answer of Toby. Wow, that's very creative. The queen cannot be captured, of course, because of the promotion. f8 would win the game. That's a back rank mate. Nice job, Toby. And after h6, queen takes d8, very well played, I believe, but here the only problem is that we are not winning on the spot. If we could somehow manage to have the bishop on f8 and the pawn on h5, that would be a mating net, but here this is maybe it looks beautiful, but it's not that effective, these moves, queen takes d8 at least. So you give up the queen for 2 rooks. But in this position, it's true that the rook and 2 pieces are really good. So I would prefer to have a rook and 2 pieces. But the problem in this position is that the minor pieces are not collaborating very well with the rook. If you had a knight on d5 and the bishop on f5, black could resign. But with the knight on a4, it's not so easy, and also the bishop on g2, it's not so easy to activate them. Especially the knight from from a4, you cannot move it, so you really need to find a plan, some way of bringing the knight out from the edge of the board. Let's see what happened in the game. Rook d8, queen g6, rook d2. It's not easy, not an easy position. Yeah, the vice pieces are passive. You should go, of course, for this knight b6, knight c4 idea, or capturing the c5 pawn if black lets you. King d1, stepping out of the pin, bishop e2, and oh, blunder. I'm sorry, Toby. You played a really good game and you played very creative, but I think with this pawn on f7, you should keep that pawn. Don't go crazy and sacrifice. Even if by material this position would be really great, having a rook and 2 minor pieces, I would love to, I said. But the knight on a4 is completely out of the game. So mainly what you have is a rook and the bishop, and this bishop is not active either. If you cannot activate those minor pieces very quickly, then white is not better, I think. I mean, you should really be precise and find a way to activate them, and black did really well starting to attack those pieces. So yeah, and this was a final blunder, and it's not even just losing the bishop, it's a mate, unfortunately, after bishop f1, queen takes f1. Toby played very creative, but I think you should be patient. When you have a passed pawn like this on f7, keep it, unless you are winning on the spot. You move the queen away. I don't see what's wrong here with white's position. You can play queen e2, and black has to keep his rooks on the back rank, so I think this is a good position for white. You can play queen e2, queen c4, attacking the c5 pawn, and then you will always threaten to promote, so the rook cannot protect, for instance, the c5 pawn, because you will capture it, and then f8 will be winning the game. So I think even though it looks beautiful, this move was not winning the game, unfortunately. And what happened in the game of Chessinator? Are we having double 70 here, or... Oh no, he has gone, double 70 is gone. I'm sorry, Chessinator, that you couldn't play in this round. So, is it done, or we have one more round? Let me see. We have played 4 rounds, and Serhat has 4 out of 4. Congratulations! Although you were very tricky in some of the games, but in Blitz, I think this is how you should be, and you should always fight, and that is something that you do very well. Even when you were a rook down, when you had a very desperate position, you kept on playing. And that's something that I think all of us can learn from you. Congratulations, Serhat. Let Me Win is a second, shared second with their captain. Both of you have 2.5 out of 4. That's also great. And remember that this is only a blitz, and with black you had inferior positions. So all the games you have lost with black, they are not real losses because they were not real games. We are here to practice. So we are here to learn from one another, to practice the positions that we have studied. Don't take the losses too badly, because in an inferior position, because the starting position was inferior for black, white is ahead in his attack. So if you have survived with black, that's already something. John25 and Chessinator has 2. They both have 2 out of 4, and Toby on 1.5 out of 4. Thank you to all of you for playing. You guys are all champions to me because you have stayed here and participated in this practice tournament. And we have been practicing what we studied in these sessions. I think it's very useful. I always say that besides studying from our Chess24 platform, from the videos, from the live shows, or from printed books as well, but I do believe that no matter which way you prefer to study, you should practice whatever you studied. So when you study an opening, try to play blitz games in that opening, blitz or rapid games in that opening with a friend, or here in the Chess24 play zone, try to play that opening as much as possible so that you have it practiced. And also with these middle game ideas, I think we need to practice it with these thematic tournaments in order to really feel those moves. So you don't just memorize those games and memorize ideas like, okay, so it's g6 and then h6, g6 and h6. No, you really start to feel those moves, and you will have it in your blood once you practice them. Once you had a game with those patterns, you will remember it a lot more than any Carlsen or Anand or Kasparov or Karpov or any game I can show you. I can show you the games of the best players in the world, but what you always remember the most is your own game, your own games. Whatever you play, you have it here deep in your head and probably in your heart too if it was a painful loss or a beautiful win. So that's why we practice, because you always remember your own games better and you need to practice whatever you learn. I hope that you enjoyed this session. I will bring back the camera here. I hope that I managed, and a few more words I wanted to say besides the thanks for participating in the thematic tournament, and besides staying here for the lecture part of the show today as well. That's how we started with the Vishy game and we finished with the thematic tournament and opposite side castling. Thank you for studying with me. I hope that you learned a lot from today's session. Next week we will have a show because I'm not going to any Olympic training camps in the near future, but next week's show, very important, will be on Tuesday, because next Wednesday I won't be here. I will let you guys know next Tuesday why I'm not here on Wednesday, but the most important, there will be a strategy show, there will be a middle game show next week as well. It's a weekly show normally when I'm here, but it's gonna be on Tuesday. Remember it, it will be announced on Chess24 for Tuesday at 6 as usual, but on Tuesday, not on Wednesday. If you're here on Wednesday, I won't be here, I'm sorry. I will be here on Tuesday. Also, make sure that you follow all the events going on. If you go to watch live tournaments, you will see loads of tournaments, from the Chinese championship to the Italian league to the women's Grand Prix to the Norway chess, Altibox Norway chess, the great event commentated by Jan Gustafsson and Peter Svidler. I as far as I have heard, I will now check myself. Magnus Carlsen has won his game today, so he's the leader of the tournament. It will be the first time he wins this tournament because, as you know, for him, competing in Norway was not as easy as you might think, because in football it's supposed to be an advantage. For him and for many other chess players, competing at home might be a disadvantage because there are so many friends, so many people you know. You can't just stay in your inner mind, in your inner circle, not paying attention to the outside world. So maybe for him and for many other chess players it's more difficult to play at home, but seems like this year he managed to forget about this disadvantage and he seems to be winning the tournament. Also, tomorrow there's the Ultimate Blitz Challenge with the recent US champion Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, Wesley So, and none other than Garry Kasparov. So Kasparov will once again sit at the board. He'll return to the chessboard. Let's see how he does against these young prodigies, the young American prodigies. It's tomorrow in the evening. Make sure you follow that show, the Norway Chess Tournament, everything on Chess24, and play more chess in the play zone. I will see you next week on Tuesday. Remember it. Thank you, and have a lovely week.